Hello and welcome to Not Made in China, the podcast where we talk all things adoption and the beautiful madness that comes with it. I'm Shaosheen, your host, and today I'm joined by Kellan Bacon. Kellan is a queer transracial adoptee and somatic therapist who believes healing starts in the body. Drawing from their own experience, Kellan creates spaces where adoptees can reconnect with forgotten parts of themselves, feel seen, and move through the layers of their story with care and authenticity. Their work is all about making room for the full, messy, beautiful experience of being human and, of course, being adopted. So recording this episode was actually a bit of a full circle moment because Kellan and I are both from the same town in China, Gaoyou, and we had the same nurse in the same orphanage at the same time, which is completely mad, and what are the odds? So yeah, it really is a full circle moment, and I was so thrilled when Kellan agreed to come on and do this episode with me. There are definitely moments throughout this episode where both of us feel like a little bit seen or a little bit exposed. We very much just put all our cards on the table, everything's up for discussion, and it was just a really lovely conversation to have. I left feeling like I've been to therapy, to be completely honest. This ended up being our second take just because we did have a bit of a technical issue the first time, but absolutely no worries, these things happen. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it, and I hope you enjoy eavesdropping on our conversation. Well, hi, Kellan, and welcome to Not Made in China.
Hi again.
Love a technical issue. So just to make you repeat absolutely everything you've just said, it would be great. Well, I'd love to hear about your adoption story, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. So my adoption story began in Gaoyou, China, which, as we were just saying, we're both from the same area, which kind of blew my mind because I was like, oh, maybe we're the people that we've actually named for the longest in our lives. But yeah, it began in Gaoyou, China. I was 8 months old when I was adopted, and I don't actually know a lot of information around prior to that. The orphanage kind of basically just gave the impression that I was found on a doorstep near the orphanage. But yeah, I was adopted into a white British family and moved over to the UK and have been residing in the UK ever since. I grew up around like the East Midlands area, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, so I feel like people won't have any clue where it is. But it's near enough to Sheffield, people might know. Currently residing in Cardiff.
Amazing. And are you enjoying living in Cardiff at the moment?
I am. I moved here because Cardiff is like super queer and has super queer vibes. So yeah, enjoying those quite a bit.
Brilliant. I'm so glad. I mean, I can imagine sort of East Midlands in the middle of nowhere. It might not be the most diverse area to grow up in.
No, definitely not.
And again, I know this is such a complex question with so many answers, but how do you personally feel about being adopted?
Yeah, so again, like such a complex question to try and summarize. For me, adoption has a lot of multitudes in that there are a lot of different seemingly opposing truths to it. So I'm actually kind of for adoption reform and mainly against adoption, especially transracial adoption. But having said that, I very much feel like there are aspects to my adoption that I feel have made me, and I feel like as spiritual beings, like as souls, we choose our life path, and I very much resonate with that, with being an adoptee. So yeah, it's a answer with a lot of multitudes in that. Yeah, I just thought that. Just randomly.
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense, and I think it's so fair to feel one way about transracial adoption, about the physical process of it, and then also be able to, well, I don't want to say that's the wrong word, but then also being able to understand and appreciate that that's the path you were on and see the good things that you've managed to take from it as well. And I think there are just so many misconceptions around adoption. And I can imagine there are lots of mixed emotions when people do ask, how do you feel about it? Because when you're sat, living a relatively happy life and you have a sort of, well, in my case anyway, you really have such a lovely family, and really, personally, I have nothing to complain about at all. And you feel like, oh, I should feel grateful is always that word that gets thrown around.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like it's such a misconception that adoptees should feel grateful. And again, I'm sure you've had people, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you ever have people say to you, oh, you must be so grateful your parents adopted you and grateful for the life you live now, etc.?
Definitely. I get that less these days, but growing up, I got that a load from, especially like older white women. They'd just be like, oh, where are you from? Do you speak Chinese? And you'd be like, no. And then they'd be like, why did your parents teach you? And then you have to kind of go through the whole explaining that your parents also don't talk Chinese. But yeah, there was a lot of, oh, you're so lucky, and how beautiful, and all of this kind of thing that really like entrenches that adoptees should feel grateful for our experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, as you were saying earlier, we can absolutely be thankful for the lives we had, the connections we have. Like I'm grateful to have such wonderful parents, but also to tell a child, oh, you should be feeling grateful for being taken from your birth family, moved overseas, and plonked in a brand new place. To be told that you should feel grateful for that, especially growing up, it's quite a confusing thing to get your head around.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think as an adoptee, yeah, working with other adoptees, there's a lot of grief in our process we throw around the word like disenfranchised, but there's a lot of ambiguous loss in adoption where, so nobody died, probably, we think, but we lose a whole family, we lose the birth culture, a potential whole life that we could have led. And there's a lot of loss and severance in that I think as adoptees we often end up burying and repressing because of this like dominant narrative of, oh, you were saved and lucky and you should be like infinitely grateful, and you can only talk about the positive, otherwise you're an ungrateful, angry adoptee. And I think, yeah, that's such a harmful narrative that society places on us.
As you were growing up, and of course, yeah, when other people were saying to you, oh, you should be grateful, not you should be grateful, but they say, oh, you must be so grateful, oh, you're so lucky. Did it take a bit of time to kind of unlearn that messaging as you grew up?
Yeah, so I think what actually happened is I think I only really started unlearning that in the last maybe 5, 6 years, after kind of lockdown era. So I did a lot of, I guess, self-discovery, soul searching through lockdown. And I think it was just that fact that there wasn't like constant societal pressure for like the first time in everyone's lives. And we were actually just like forced to sit with ourselves, which is, apparently profound for us these days. And yeah, I started coming to terms with my racial identity and realizing that I wasn't, in fact, like white. I'm a person of color. And it was at that point that I guess I was going through the process of what we call like coming out of the fog, in quotation marks. So like adoptees describe that process of going from feeling like adoption hasn't affected them and not really knowing much about the system to realizing how adoption has shaped us and the trauma and the loss involved, and really digging into that like truth and the system itself, the $1 billion industry.
Absolutely. And when you talk about coming out of the fog, was there a particular event that was a catalyst for that? Or was it just over time as you grew up, you naturally started uncovering these parts of yourself?
Yeah, I think the main catalyst was just before lockdown. Actually, that was like my mental health crisis phase, and I ended up like in hospital, and I was in like a really bad place with that. And I think it almost took that for me, I think, to really look into what was going on underneath the surface layers of just being, I guess, a high achiever and slightly control freak, and all of these things that kind of society sometimes praises, like hardworking and perfectionist. And actually, there was so much going on underneath that I have now kind of connected with my experience of being an adoptee and that trauma. So yeah, I think it was that mental health really was my catalyst.
I'm sorry to hear that you went through that, but then I'm also so glad that you were able to heal so much from that. And I'm sure are continuing to do so. It's never a healed and you're done, but of course, it's an
Yeah,
ongoing
sure.
process. And I'd love to talk about somatic therapy and how that's helped you. And then also just to give anyone who doesn't know what it is, a bit of an overview of actually what it's all about.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, so somatic therapy. So soma is actually in Latin it means the body. So we're just dealing with the body basically and working from a more what we call bottom up approach. So a lot of Western therapy is, like traditionally like talk therapy, and we call that quite like neck up. And we're always kind of like we're using our brains a lot, we're rationalizing, we're trying to like logic and kind of finding ways to intellectualize our experiences. But what somatics does is it takes us out of our brain really and gets us back and reconnected with our body and the internal sensations that are going on there. So we're working with the nervous system, and we're working with maybe the muscles and the fascia and the tissues that are holding on to body memory. So you maybe heard of like the body keeps the score, like that's a organ. The primal wound is maybe a book in the adoption community that's quite well known. But what modern science is really showing more and more, and it's not talked about enough, is that it's our bodies that hold on to trauma. And so to heal and to shift how we are in the world and how we're relating to the world, and we really need to get into our bodies and be with that experience. And so that's really where somatics comes in and where my work comes in.
It's so interesting. And actually, before we had this conversation, it's not something that I was familiar with. So when you mentioned it, yeah, I was really excited because it's something brand new to me. And I'm sure brand new to lots of people listening. And can I ask you, what led you to somatic therapy in the first place? And how has that supported your healing as an adoptee?
Yeah, so I actually got into somatics kind of accidentally, in that I got COVID fatigue. And I was at the time on a nutritional therapy course. I was doing a lot of different like health and lifestyle things to help with this fatigue, but it was still pretty brutal, and it was having like a big effect on my mental health because I'd always been really active. And so it was somebody actually on the course that mentioned breathwork, that it may help with energy. And I kind of came to it being quite skeptical and being like, I've been breathing all my life. Like, what is this going to do for me? I'm pretty sure it won't make that much difference. But I was desperate at that point. So I tried it. Funnily enough, it really helped. And suddenly my energy like started improving, and it gave me that mental clarity. It like cleared the brain fog. And then I ended up just getting really obsessed and ended up going to like an in-person event, which I thought would be more of that like energy kind of activating breath work like that. But it ended up being something called conscious connected breathing. And that breath style is also known as psychedelic breath or transformational breath work. And so it's basically a way that we can activate our nervous system to bring up things that the body has just been holding on to. And it was through that I just felt I was connecting to parts of myself that I just never been able to access. And it very much felt like so much anger and so much grief just like came out of me in this like one hour session that I was like, I think I need more. And so I really got into this somatics and this breath work way of working the body. And from there, yeah, just in a very neurodivergent fashion, just got very hooked on all of it. And yeah, it just really called to me, and basically took over my life. So I ended up getting into it as a job.
No, that's fantastic. And do you feel, well, it might be a silly question, but do you feel that discovering somatic therapy and breath work have really helped you uncover or reconnect with parts of yourself that you might not have accessed before?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was really the missing piece for me. And I've heard a lot of people say similarly, like where we've done the intellectual stuff, we've done the CBT, we've done the talk therapy, we've done lots of, sometimes really deep therapy work and all the self-help and all the different lifestyle and the philosophy. And yet still something is missing. And maybe we've even tried, like the more well known about like meditation and that kind of area of healing. And I think so many of us are still just struggling with something that is deeper than what we can access through just talking alone. And especially for us adoptees, because, as we all know, we're generally adopted quite early on and don't have like explicit memory from that time. But as babies, we can't regulate our nervous systems. Everything is very subconscious at that age. And so we don't have the ability, to rationalize. And so yeah, we're carrying all this stuff. So yeah, definitely, it unlocked so much for me, and I'm still on that journey of just unlocking things really that I didn't think I'd be able to ever even get close to.
And that's really exciting. And it must be such a liberating feeling once you realize there's so much in front of you. You might not know what exactly yet, but when you discover something that really allows yourself to be truly, truly yourself, that must be so freeing.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, on one side of the spectrum, I guess there's that thought of almost like it's like the more healing you do, the more you see, like the more you see more stuff to heal. So it's almost like this never ending journey, which can feel a bit demoralizing at times, like in phases. But I think, when we come to this stuff, it's really like hope, gives you hope, because you feel like you're just stuck with things or patterns in life or self-sabotaging, etc. And then you realize that actually there's a way to work with that. And I think so many of us like just lose hope. Like I know I did around things like around attachment, like self-worth. So yeah, it's not an easy journey, I would say, but it's definitely worth it, I think.
Absolutely. And you must learn so much about yourself along the way, and also about the people around you and who are the right people you want to have around on that journey with you, because it really is something so deeply personal. You want to have the right friends, family, and I can imagine it really does show, whilst you're going through that journey yourself, it must show other people's true colours in a sense too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that as we heal that sometimes happens is it does change like your close circle. And like some people do say the same, but some people you just realize that you're not so aligned with, and that can be like a difficult process. But if we're healing and giving ourselves capacity around those things, it does really help us to define what's aligned in life, with connections, relationships, our jobs, like just how we're living our lives in so many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And with the adoptees that you work with, I know everyone's story and experience will be so different, but are there any kind of overarching themes that you notice or any kind of recurring patterns that come up?
Yeah, definitely. So it might not shock people, but many of the adoptees have like really deep abandonment wounds and attachment wounds. So a lot of us, myself included, starting this work, I had very, very disorganized. And when we're talking about attachment styles, I don't like to get super boxed in with them, because ultimately we can all display all of these different patterns and behaviors. Like we aren't our attachment style; they're just like a pattern. But yeah, I had that very like typical, like I didn't trust connection or love, and yeah, was very anxious when it did come along. And so that's definitely something that I notice a lot with adoptees. It's just this primal fear of being adopted, and as babies, that is kind of like the fear of annihilation. To be left, is survival. Like that's how our nervous system is triggered. And so that's usually like deep work that I do with adoptees. I think another thing that I notice is definitely around self-worth, and that, it's all tied in, but self-worth wounds and, almost like feeling the need to be perfect, to feel safe in the world, to feel lovable. And I think another thing is, and maybe this is just the people I attract, because I feel like I tend to attract people that feel through the world kind of similarly to me.
It makes sense.
But we are generally like quite highly sensitive or neurodivergent, So like autistic, ADHDers, very like sensory sensitive, and so we tend to like feel a lot and feel everything all at once, and so that can be really interesting to work with, and giving people like the capacity and tools to work with that and have it as a strength rather than a curse, which I know it often can feel like.
Absolutely. And what you do is so empowering to people. And just listening to you go through all those things, I'm like, oh my God, that's literally me. Every single one is me to a T. And I was like, oh, I'm so seen right now. So I'm just going to BRB, just booking an appointment. But it's so true. I mean, just going back to what you were saying about attachment, of course, we see so much in like social media about attachment style, it is very interesting. But I agree with you. You don't want to just box yourself in and say, right, I'm anxious attached. My attachment style is anxious. That's who I am. That's my personality. You're so right when you say there are threads of ourselves that we can find probably in most different attachment styles. But yeah, when I was younger, I don't know about you, but I got the worst homesickness in the world. Like, I could not be away from my parents. It was an absolute nightmare trying to get me to sleep over at people's houses. They'd have to go and pick me up. I think the worst was
Also type now.
yeah. was when I think we were going on holiday. We went to the Isles of Scilly every year, like little islands off Cornwall. And the night before, we'd always stay in a B&B in Penzance. And mum and dad's bed was, I say here, that's not very helpful for anyone listening, but there was a double bed. And right at the foot of the bed was my bed. So I was literally sleeping next to my parents' feet. And even then, I couldn't hack it because it was a new place. And I got homesick then. And I remember just having a complete meltdown. And I knew it was ridiculous because they were literally there. And I think my parents were just like, oh my God, like what, why are you homesick? Because they asked me why I was upset. And I was like, I just feel homesick. And they're like, we're literally here. Like we're right here. Like we're not, or I think I might have said, oh, I miss you. Or I don't know. I just felt really, really scared that they were going to leave or something was going to happen. And they were like, no, we're literally right here. Like, how can you miss us? Your head is on our feet. Like you could not be closer to us if you tried. And even going to school and going to stay with my aunt for the first time, I would not let go of my mother. And I was just crying and crying. I'm mortifying for them because it was in the middle of Waterloo Station and just and they were like, we just want to go on holiday to Bruges and just let us have our few days. I just found that so difficult. But yeah, I don't know if you had any sort of similar experiences growing up.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that and feel that I had similar struggles, I think, where, like first sleepovers and stuff, I just couldn't hack it. I was just like, well, I need to go back. Like I can't stay here. And yeah, like things like moving house, like very, very triggering to the point of like meltdowns, just like feeling like your whole life is just like over, like destabilized, like and I think first day, like my first full day at school, I just started crying because I was like, that feeling of feeling homesick and feeling left, and like, when are they going to come back? Like, are they going to come back? Like, yeah, definitely.
And it's an interesting one as you grow up as well. Because for me, again, I think I've grown up very much like, as we were saying earlier, adoption really hasn't really affected me. Like, I'm fine. It's no biggie. And then but especially coming into starting dating and being in romantic relationships, things get thrown at you left, right, and centre. And I'll be worried that I'm such a planner. And I need to know when I'm going to see someone at what time. I need to have this routine. And if anything changes, it's the end of the world. And if like anything, and it's so ridiculous because my rational brain's going, just relax, you idiot. Like, obviously they're coming back. But then like my emotional brain's just going like, but what if they don't? They haven't given me an exact time and what's going to happen. And I'm sure like a lot of that, obviously I don't want to just assume it's because I'm adopted, but I'm sure a lot of it is deeply rooted in that because just from being scared of being left, I suppose.
Yeah. And like you were saying, it's maybe not accurate to assume everything is always adoption, but I feel like it's safe to assume that like adoption has a big part in that. It makes so much sense. But yeah, I think when we're talking about connections, whether it's romantic dating or just like deep connections, and being in the queer community, like the queer community like really redefines like relationships and like community. And I've had a lot of deep relationships that aren't of a romantic nature, but that they're equally as important and soulful and deep and meaningful. And I think all our any connections really are like very much mirrors to our triggers. Like they really hold up like here are all your wounded parts and you're gonna look at them all.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely relate to that one.
And then also even talking about self-worth and how we feel about ourselves and being perfectionists. And again, I don't know about you, but I'm very, very harsh on myself. And that could just be a personality trait. It might not have anything to do with being adopted. But again, as we said, chances are there is an element of it in there somewhere.
My chance.
But yeah, I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I used to be such a perfectionist. And it was like I had to get 100%, otherwise it wasn't good enough. And it was almost like, getting A's and A stars, like that wasn't good enough. I had to be like the best, and it was a lot of pressure. I just never felt like I could ever live up to my own expectations of myself. And even when people are like, "This is really good," like we don't expect you to be the best at anything, particularly. I just, there's part of me that just didn't believe that, and I think, over the last few years, like getting to know. Like inner critic part, that part of me that is like always bracing and holding myself to expectations that are unrealistic, really getting to know that part of me. And it's this part that feels like I have to be perfect to ultimately feel safe, like that lovable thing again. I think that's definitely toned down in the last few years, which is quite a relief. It's quite nice. But yeah, I think it's hard to to look at those parts of ourselves, because there's a lot of pain within them. Like they're there because they're protecting us from stuff. And this is something that I do with like parts work with people. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned around like personality, because I feel like we think about personality as this like very kind of set in stone, rigid thing. Like this is my personality. Like maybe I'm like introverted, but when the further I've kind of gone into like somatic healing and stuff, the more I'm realizing that actually personality is so fluid and so changeable, and things that we might label ourselves as like shy, introverted. Yeah, for a lot of us, they can be like parts of us that are protecting us, And when we see those parts of us and create space for them to process things, we realize that actually we're not that, or like we're not that introverted. Actually, like, oh, okay, it's safe to be perceived now, and like, whoa, like we're confident and we're like talking to people and enjoying. I'm using that example because I feel like that's kind of something that happened with me quite a bit. And I'm definitely still not one to like want to hog like the limelight and the center of attention. But yeah, I think I've just realized that my like authentic way of being is I love like connecting with lots of different people, and yeah, a lot of people are like, you're not that introverted. Everyone needs time alone. But yeah, I've gone from being almost like I don't like people to like very connection seeking. So yeah, it's interesting.
It's very interesting. And especially when you're a child, when people love to label you and go, oh, you're the shy kid, or oh, like speak up, or oh, like let your hair down. And then you're sat there like, I'm fine. But then you do start to think, am I the shy kid? Like, am I quiet? And sometimes it is just finding the people who you are your most authentic self around, and people whose energy you resonate with, or people you just get on with and you click with. And then suddenly you are the confident person and you are outspoken and vivacious and funny. And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I could be this. But it's because you're around the right people. And because for me now as an adult, sometimes I will be sat there with somebody and I won't say a word because I've actually got nothing to say.
Yes.
And they might not be a particularly interesting person. And I just don't really want to have to waste much time having a conversation. Whereas if it's someone I really get on with, then you bounce off each other and you do want to have that chat. And just because you're like that with one person doesn't mean that's what your whole personality is like.
Yeah. And you raise a good point. I feel like I've gotten to that point in life where I'm just like, if connections, like if we're not aligned with, there's just nothing in common, I'm just a bit like, well, this is a waste of time. Like life's too short, isn't it? I'm like, you
so
get on. And I'd rather have like a deep conversation with someone that I really connect with than, I don't know, talk about something like the weather. Unless it's a really interesting conversation about the weather,
Unless the weather's doing some mad things, in which case sign me up, I'll talk about it all day. But
if we're talking climate and all of this stuff, then maybe.
And then also, just kind of going back to what we were saying about self-worth. For me personally, again, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm a massive, massive people pleaser. And now I've only just started to notice when I do it. So someone will say something and then I'll automatically agree with it or find a way to empathize with them and see it from their side, even if I fundamentally don't agree with it myself. And then afterwards, I'll be there like, what just happened? Because you don't even realize you do it. And part of me does wonder, is that perhaps related to going back right to the beginning? And do you think we people please because we're scared of people leaving? And if we're not the perfect version of ourselves to that person, there's a risk of them deciding to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that we do in life is basically to keep ourselves safe. And that's not like a conscious thing. It's very much a subconscious thing. So yeah, a lot of what we want, a lot of our desires, a lot of like what we actually think is kind of overridden by this like need to be safe. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it at all. And so yeah, not just adoptees, but anyone that's like, I guess, experienced any sort of like misattunement in early developmental years, like a parent caregiver wasn't attuned to their emotions, or they had some sort of like rejection, abandonment. Yeah, like I think we do struggle with that. You could people please and almost like this. If I'm not what you want me to be, then you'll leave and I'll be alone and then I'll die alone. Like that's kind of what our subconscious does. And part of what I do with my work now, I do something called root cause therapy. And so the idea with root cause therapy is that we actually take the subconscious back to the first event where beliefs form. So our subconscious beliefs basically like dictate our whole lives and we're like running off this script of like what we believe. So say if say if you want to start a business, but like you have a limiting belief of like, I'm not good enough, you might consciously be doing all the right things and, going about making this business. But like at every point, you're basically like self-sabotaging because you have this belief that you're like not good enough. And so our beliefs are always trying to prove themselves right. So it's like we'll basically do everything to prove that belief right, even though like consciously we're like, yeah, I'm up for this business. And it's kind of what I was doing to myself when I started my practice actually. And yeah, so with root cause we do timeline therapy, we do like a lot of different things, incorporate somatics and allow our bodies to like process that event that caused the belief and to allow those beliefs to shift. And what's really interesting is that working with adoptees, yeah, sometimes we go to like early life, sometimes people feel like they're in the womb. So they might like, things might be like muffled and they might feel like their birth mother's emotions and literally almost go through that like being in the womb. Yeah, and some people, like it's deep stuff. And then some people find like past lives. Some people feel like they go to before birth. And that's something I do a lot as well. I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to like when I was relinquished or like being, I mean, I have gone back to being in my birth mother's womb, but I thought it'd be very strongly adoption. But what I found is actually, yeah, seemingly the subconscious wants to take us further back and we'll go to like ancestral memories maybe, or like past lives. Like I found like a gladiator past life. I was an animal at one point and just, yeah, like loads of different things. It's just super interesting because it's a bit like, is it just the subconscious's way of processing it in a safe way for it, or is it a literal like past life? And I guess that's up to people to feel through. But I very much believe in the latter more and more these days.
But it's so interesting. And when you talk about going back to the moment you're in your mother's womb or past lives, it might sound a silly question, so sorry if it sounds clunky, but how do you physically get back to that space? Is it sort of triggered through words, or is it just sort of you just taking some time and trying to just psychologically get yourself back to that place?
Yeah, so we do with the root cause, I use language that kind of directly speaks to the subconscious. So it's like part of like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And there's like maybe some visualization involved, but the process can look slightly different from person to person because, like some people are more visual, some people are more auditory. And we use something called timeline therapy. It's basically like, yeah, it's almost like you're kind of floating along this like timeline of your life. And then we go into the event. People basically feel the emotions as if they're there. So like it maybe won't be as vivid as say like if you took like a shroom trip and feel like on acid. It's not at all like that. But it's just like a very subtle, it's almost like a light hypnosis where it's a bit like you're daydreaming, but you're feeling it. It's not like a dream, but where you're still fully in control. So like people could like disagree with something I'm saying or be like, oh no, it's actually more like this, or just come out of it. So yeah, it's like a very like safe kind of feeling way to access these events and to process things. But yeah, a lot of my work actually, I usually don't start people off with the root cause unless they've maybe done some somatics, because it kind of takes that ability to be with the internal sensations, like our internal environment, what's going on. So sometimes my work just involves kind of connecting people to that first and building capacity for that, so their nervous system can like handle that.
It's really, really interesting. And again, it's something that I'm completely foreign to. So it's great. Thank you so much for sharing on that.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So.
No, it's brilliant. So going back to what you were saying about, having past lives and did we briefly touch upon souls at one point?
I feel like maybe, yeah, I'm quite a soulful person, I've realised. I grew up Christian and I grew up not being super church-going in that sense, but being quite religious. To the point of being a bit preachy.
Really?
Yeah.
I could not imagine that.
Yeah, I was very preachy. And yeah, to the point I was being like, no sex before marriage, all of this stuff. And I think when I was maybe 14, I was kind of like this doesn't fit so well with me anymore. And that kind of coincided with, questioning my sexuality and like realizing I wasn't who the world said I should be. And that perhaps God, in quotation marks, had ideas about that. I don't know. Yeah, it's okay. It is. But yeah, I've always believed in something greater, like a higher power. I don't particularly believe in like a higher being so much anymore. I don't believe in like religions as we as humans have seemingly made them into this structured thing. But I just believe, like, simply, we are spiritual beings, like we have a soul, and that's it really. I think we feel things on a soulful level. Yeah, I'm definitely more and more open to spiritual concepts these days, and things like past lives and believing in like universal energy. Like if we're all energy and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, like where do we go?
Exactly. No, I completely agree with that. I think I'm very similar to you in the sense that I think, yeah, I definitely believe in a higher power of some kind. But I know some people choose to name it, some people decide to practice certain religions. But yeah, for me, it's definitely just there is a higher power. What it is, absolutely no idea. But it's definitely out there. And then, yeah, I'm the same. I think I said to you in our conversation before when I was imagining what souls look like. When I was younger, I just assumed there were all these sort of souls just floating around, just floating above Earth. And then when a baby's born, it's like, that's me. And then they just go, or they'll look at the parents and go, like, are we a match? And if they are, then they'll attach themselves to that child. And I know
Yeah,
that's such a
I love
simplistic
that.
way of
I
looking
love
at
that
it.
idea.
But that's how my
I
brain
feel
works,
like I could,
apparently.
yeah, I could buy into that. Thank you.
And also, you said something really interesting when we spoke last about feeling that spiritual connection to your birth mother, especially around your birthday. I'd love to know a little bit
Yeah,
more
very
about
much
that.
so. Yeah, so I think it's something that I potentially always felt. And I always, again, it was one of those moments that, being an adoptee, like I just gaslit myself a lot, where it's like, you're meant to be happy on your birthday, you're meant to be celebratory. And I always just kind of felt really sad. And I think as I've gotten older and I've gotten more connected to myself, I've realized that I do feel like a lot in terms of being connected with my birth mom. And it's almost like that one day where I'm like assuming she's alive, that we're definitely like thinking about each other. Like it's a day that connects us. And so yeah, these days I don't actually celebrate on my birthday. I have my birthday to like connect with her in ways I want to. Like sometimes I just light some incense, and I'm finding more like cultural like ways to explore my cultural heritage, like with being Chinese, to connect with her as well, and maybe writing her a letter, that kind of thing, and burning it. And yeah, I feel like that's been really healing for me. And having others that get that and witness that and hold me through that has been very healing. And then because I came out as trans, how many years ago? 4 years ago. Um, yeah, I actually celebrate like my birth slash name day slash just being becoming on my name day now. So that was a nice way I think for me to reclaim my identity. I didn't. I know some people change their name back to like a Chinese name or somewhere from their cultural heritage. I didn't feel the pull to do that. But yeah, it definitely felt like a reclamation still.
That's wonderful. And that must be so empowering to be able to take that back in whatever way you choose to define. And again, I think it's also important to, yeah, like you said, have that spiritual connection with your birth mother and acknowledge your birth parents are, of course, a huge part of your life. You wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here without mine. You wouldn't be here without yours. And for me, growing up, we did a lot of things to acknowledge them. We'd light a candle for them every birthday, every adoption day. And I didn't realize when I wrote my life story book, I read it back the other week because I have a life. And I didn't realize that my mum had got me to write letters to my birth parents when I was little. It was a very normal conversation to have around the house. We talk about them a lot. We talk about how I felt about them, how they might have felt. And I
It
don't
sounds
know
really
if
healthy.
it was really nice. And I feel very lucky to have had that because it felt like a really safe space. But I don't know about you. I mean, did your parents talk to you much about your birth parents? Or how did they broach the whole adoption topic with you?
Yeah, I mean, they were always very open about me being adopted, which I feel is kind of, you don't really get much choice when your parents are white and you're Chinese, it's
It's
quite
hard to hide.
obvious. Yeah, it would take a lot of effort, I feel. So yeah, they were always very open about that. And, we had like Chinese New Year stuff going on in school, and I had a few Chinese adoptee friends. And so they were quite embracing around it in that way. But in terms of like emotions around it, I don't think there was really much talk around that, and I don't think there was that same like attunement emotionally around that. And I was like a pro like denier. Like I was pro at just like shoving them all down, and it's what I did with like my sexuality. It's what I did with my gender because I basically kind of realized I was trans when I was 16, and then denied it again until lockdown when I was 21. Yeah, 21. So yeah, I was good at staying in the denial around how good how I was feeling. So yeah, I think, in some ways they tried their best to, yeah, give me that space. I think they did an all right job in some ways, but I think it's that like emotional level that really like makes a lot of difference, I feel. Just from there, like knowing myself and knowing other people.
Definitely. And I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that you do have to go all the way back right from the start and think and really consider how does that make you feel and how might the other people involved felt as well, and to really get a full picture in order to understand truly what happened and then being able to move forwards from it.
Yeah, like just really being like with that feeling, which I think is something that, in our like Western society, we've kind of lost the ability to do a little bit. It's all very bypassy. Like we're like, I'll meditate and like your feelings will go away, and you just need to like go outside more and go to the gym. It's very, we have a concept of like emotions, but we're not very good at like actually being with them, just letting our bodies do what they naturally know how to do.
Completely get that.
So yeah.
I think a lot of it learning how to, I remember one big thing when I went to therapy, just learning to sit in the discomfort is something I'm shit at. I cannot do it for the life of me. And it's so uncomfortable having to sit and think back and really go in deep to how you're feeling. And that's something we're not taught to do. You don't teach, it doesn't get taught in schools. There's not really, well, I guess nowadays there is more of a voice around it, but it's a skill. If we all just learn to maybe sit in the discomfort a little bit more and really be taught how to access those emotions, I mean, maybe the world would be a better place. I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would hope so. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people these days, like, yeah, they know about sitting in the discomfort. Like, they know it's something that they should be doing, but like, yeah, no one teaches you how. Like, no one gives you the tools and the resources and like how to work with your nervous system around sitting with the discomfort. So like a lot of people, like I tried this when I was at uni. Like I was very like, I had adoption feels coming up then, and I was just sitting with them, and it was really terrible for me because I just didn't have like the capacity, like the emotional like bandwidth to actually do that. So I was just like driving myself into this like kind of despair, like just this grief that never ended. Because yeah, I've always been like very pulled towards my emotion, but yeah, I just didn't know how to be with them in a way that was helpful, that actually allowed me to process rather than just kind of getting weighed down with them. Because I feel, yeah, there's like such a massive difference with that. And yeah, that's something that I work with people around, because yeah, we're just not taught it. And all these alternative kind of like indigenous tribes, and you kind of see it as exotic practices maybe, or like rituals, but like they knew how to be with their bodies and their emotions. Like they were already doing it, so it's like a unlearning process, I guess, of like the conditioning where we're like, oh, we can't just we can't like shake, like we can't cry in this moment. But actually, like our bodies have like so much wisdom, and they know how to move through stuff. But like, yeah, we've got this conditioning that's like, we shouldn't be feeling this way, and critical voice comes in, and different like parts that are just like, no.
It's so hard to just put a pause on those, like when all the voices come in at once. I think it's what we were saying earlier about being high. Some people are highly sensitive, and I'm definitely one of those people. I would just feel everything all at once, and then I'll be fine. I'll let it all out, and then I'll be absolutely fine. Or I might go to the loo. I have a literally stand in front of the mirror and have a word with myself because it's something I'm getting, and you just feel so, one minor thing there's nothing to do with anything just gets you so riled up, and you just feel, when you just feel like that rage is sort of bubbling up and you don't really know where it's come from. So sometimes, yeah, I just have to go to the loo and just literally talk to myself in the mirror and be like, right, you better look at the facts now and sort yourself out, because this is just
specifically the loo.
That's such an irrational response. But yeah, but then we're not always taught. Yeah, we're not taught how to regulate our emotions a lot of the time, and we just have to figure it out for ourselves, and that's really scary. And some of us have the capacity and support to do that, but a lot of us don't, and that seems insane to me.
Yeah, and you brought up anger as well, and your prior question of like teams with adoptees, like anger and rage is like massive, because a lot of us like we call it like over and under coupling, but basically like we mask deep, like deep emotions, like a lot of deep grief, sadness, and hurt with anger a lot of the time. Especially for more like mask presenting people, like anger is much more socially acceptable. And so a lot of adoptees have this like repressed rage in them, and really learning or like anger isn't something to be fearful of or that's negative, but is actually like just a protective energy within us that like wants agency and wants better for us. It's kind of like our best friend. Like I say that and it sounds cheesy, but it really is. And yeah, like embodied anger is like it's what has got people human rights. That was anger. So yeah, learning to be with that anger, yeah, really big in our journey. It's something I've been on a big journey with anger. I used to have like rage fests and like break stuff and kick off and yeah, it's a big journey.
And it's interesting when you start to notice what's triggering that anger. Because again, I can't talk for anyone else, but whenever anyone changes a plan on me, no matter how minor it is, this feeling will just like come up. Or if I feel like someone I'm talking to is ignoring me, or if, I don't know, I'm trying to think of more examples, but mainly if people change plans, or if I feel like I've been let down in any way, even if I haven't, 9 times out of 10, I've not been let down at all because I've made an assumption in my head that this is the plan. And I haven't told the person, but and then when
they don't know about this.
They don't know about this plan.
Expectation.
So I just made an assumption. I haven't told them. And then they might change the plan ever so slightly, or they might do something different or have other plans. And this rage will just build up. And whenever I feel like I've been slightly let down or something's changed on me or I've not been in control of a situation, I would just feel this anger. And I'm like, where is this coming from? This is ridiculous, because rationally I know no one's let me down. No one's leaving me. Everything's fine. But then for some reason in my head, it's just this like panic and rage, and I just don't know where, I just don't know where it comes from. And it's, again, maybe, it sounds like I need to do a bit of work, but it's really interesting when you're talking about that, because I think perhaps, again, I don't want to assume, but perhaps it is maybe looped to that, and kind of back to right from the start.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for anyone listening, like, when you're just having that like completely like a response that is just completely disproportional to what is happening, like, yeah, maybe don't assume what it is, but like that's been triggered. It's like it's there's a wound that's been prodded there. And yeah, just so I think for adoptees, there's so many things through life that like, lack of agency, expectations, like being misrepresented or misunderstood. Like there's so many things that echo that early experience of being relinquished and not having a family and then just being plonked in the country. And yeah, there's so many triggers to navigate that like we're always doing it.
Definitely. And then another topic which is so relevant, just I guess to anyone in life, but especially to transracial adoptees, is that whole thing of identity and belonging. I mean, it's such a complex topic, but as you were growing up, did you feel like you had that sense of belonging in the communities you found yourself in, whether that be sort of school, home, or wherever you were?
Yeah, this is such an important topic. No, I didn't. I didn't really ever feel like I belonged anywhere, ever. I very much felt like kind of like an alien a lot of the time, like very, and yeah, it would be like, I'd have friends or like groups of people, but I very much just always felt like an outsider a lot of the time. And I think it's only more recently getting involved with the queer, trans, intersex, people of colour, QT for short, groups that I think I've actually felt that like sense of like home and belonging with people. And I don't know if it's just, yeah, like you said, they're my people and I've finally found my people. But I think some of that, part of that at least, comes from within, where I'm kind of finding more of a home within myself, like I'm accepting parts of myself that I basically ostracized before, like we all have like, we call them like wounded or exiled parts, like we should try and shove them away. We don't want to. So I think I'm finding more of a home within myself, and that has led me to make more connections that feel like home. So yeah, like didn't have that growing up, but more so now, sure.
It's really good. And again, I know you touched on it already, but was there a particular moment in your life where you really did have a strong sense of belonging? I mean, did you say when it was, perhaps when you moved to Cardiff and there was the queer trans community there?
Yeah, I mean, there's been belonging here in Cardiff. There's been belonging in Sheffield as well. And I think it wasn't even that long ago. It was 2-3 years ago. I went to like a radical pride in Sheffield, and it's radical because it's not like corporate or anything. It's just they like shut them. We like marched on the roads. It was such a great feeling. Like just stopped all the traffic, and it's just about like grassroots stuff and like the people and like rights basically. And yeah, that was a powerful moment to me. And then yeah, just engaging more with that community, I think, and somewhat the queer spiritual community as well. There's a festival that I went to a couple of times called Queer Spirit Fest. So it's basically just all queer people being spiritual in a field together. Yeah, it was honestly like the most safe feeling environment I think I've ever been in. And yeah, that was great. You know, there's pockets of like this safe feeling community that I didn't even know existed. Like I didn't know it was you could feel that safe. So yeah, I hope people find their pockets, whatever that looks like for them. I think that is a deeply healing experience in and of itself. Yeah, we're not meant to heal alone. Like it's not a solo journey. And I think we forget that sometimes. That, you know, it's not just like this self-improvement project that we just have to work on ourselves. Because it can feel like that a lot. But yeah, it's actually like a community thing. Yeah.
And it's amazing when you say you really do feel safe in those communities and those spaces. And it is so key for everyone, exactly as you just said, to have those places or people to go to where you really have total safety, emotional safety, physical safety, and where you just feel accepted. I think that's probably something I've massively taken for granted. And then, of course, growing up, you realise that so many people don't have that. So to have that now is, yeah, it's just so crucial. I just wish more people had it from the off. And it's just, yeah, it just blows my mind that people don't. And I know that's coming from an extremely privileged place. I'm very lucky to even be able to say that. But just knowing how important it's been to me growing up, because I don't think I ever really felt like I stood out. I mean, every now and then, people would point out that I'm Chinese, but I already knew that, so it wasn't a shock. But I had lots of Chinese friends or Chinese adopted friends and non-adopted Chinese friends or friends, or not even just from China, but my parents have friends from all over the world who everyone looks different. We speak different languages, eat different foods, different religions. So I think I've always been surrounded by different people. So I've never felt different myself. Whereas speaking to some other adopted friends, also from China, where they've grown up in places, they haven't been as multicultural. It is very interesting kind of seeing the difference and sort of seeing the difference in the way we see ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think I had that diversity so much growing up. Yeah, maybe bits of it. Yeah, I think that feeling like an outsider was like innate to me as well. Like it was kind of affirmed by my external circumstances. But yeah, I think that alien feeling was like a me thing as well. And yeah, perhaps adoption related, but perhaps maybe going back like to another lifetime, who knows?
But it's so interesting when you say it's an alien feeling. Feeling like some kind of alien. That must have been such a strange thing to feel, especially as a child when you're not quite sure why.
Yeah, I just always remember being just being like, I don't belong here, and like almost like wanting to move to the other side of the world. But then at some point I realized that probably wouldn't fix the problem of like not feeling like I belonged. And yeah, sometimes just like feeling like I was probably made for like a different planet with like aliens. So yeah, who knows?
But then it is so lovely.
Maybe that's true.
But it is so great then when you do find people you have that soul connection with. And you're like, oh my God, like you're an alien too. This is brilliant. Like we can, and it's such an amazing feeling when you have those, whether it's an individual person or a group of people or a place, and you just feel like you belong, and you just know in your gut, this is where I need to be. And having that feeling is just, yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, and I'm not sure everyone gets that in their lives. I'm not sure people find that or find soul connection. So yeah, even though there's I think loss that I didn't feel that when I was younger, I do also feel very fortunate to have found soul connections and people that I can call a community. That's special, I think.
No, it's incredible and it's so important, and it's just mad to me that it's a privilege to feel safe. And in the world today, I'm
just thinking that it's a good thing. Yeah,
and again, of course, yeah, same as you. I feel so lucky to have those spaces and people who I feel safe around. But yeah, as we said, so many people don't, and they never have that. And again, that just blows my mind. The world's gone mad. But I know that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah, that's another podcast.
Yeah, definitely, we can do it though. Let's put the world to rights.
Oh yeah, we need 10 hours at least.
Yeah, I just do a 24-hour marathon.
Yeah, I think so many people, it's like I think a lot of people, and I was one of these people, we're like afraid of being too niche. Like we're afraid of like really discovering identities because then like no one will be like us. And I know I felt a lot like that with being like POC, a transracial adoptee, and then discovering queerness and being transmasc but not being like a trans man, and all of these different identities resonating with the asexual community and just like different facets of life. But like the more I've leaned, I don't know the grammar there. The more I've like embraced, the more niche groups I found, and like the more connections that I do just instantly vibe with. Yeah. So I don't know if there's something in that for anyone listening, but just the more it's like the more niche you get, the more people you find.
That's amazing. And I think, again, I completely agree. I think it's quality over quantity when it comes to connecting with people. And if you find those people who make you feel safe and secure and valued and energized, if that's one person in the world, hang on to that because that's so valuable. And that is so much better than a whole room of people who are just meh, or who just don't make you feel energized, or when you leave a conversation and you just feel drained. Like you don't need that one. It's definitely quality over quantity, I think, anyway, when it comes to friendships and personal connections.
I very much agree. Yeah, I think you can be very lonely being surrounded by people.
Definitely. And as you were growing up, did you have many other Chinese friends, or did you go to the catch reunions and all of those kinds of things?
Yeah, there was Cash. Am I saying it right? I know it's like Catch.
Cash. I mean,
there was a group. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, there was like a summer school I went to, and I still have family friends that they were adopting at the same time as my parents. So our parents basically made friends first through the adoption process, and then we just stayed friends, and then we've been friends growing up. And one of them actually lives in Cardiff at the moment. So yeah, we like did Lunar New Year and things together, and I'm not saying who they are, but a lot of the Chinese adoptee connections that I've made are also queer. It seems like queerness is like vastly overrepresented in the Chinese adoptee community, seemingly. And I'd love to I don't know. I feel like there's a connection there.
That'd be fascinating to look into.
Yeah. So I did have, there were some really nice connections there, like some things to engage with people that did look like me and both culture and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, it is important to grow up kind of seeing people who do look like you. But then funnily enough, I was talking to somebody else when we were recording an episode, and we were saying when you're younger, you're often thrown together with other Chinese adoptees, and because you're all adopted and you have the shared experience. And I guess, sometimes, fortunately, you do actually get on with them very well, but sometimes you might not as well. But as a kid, you kind of feel like, I should be friends with them, or I should like them, or I should have this connection with them because we have this shared experience. And actually, no, it's not the case at all. Like sometimes you might have a shared experience with somebody, but you've experienced it in a completely different way, or you might not have a soul connection with that person, and that's okay as well. But those catch reunions, they were fun. Like they were I just remember suddenly you go from just going out about your everyday life to being thrown into a hotel with hundreds of people who look like you, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But it's also like, oh my god.
Yeah, I still get that. Like if there's a bunch of East Asian people all in one place, I'm like, oh my god, like this is crazy. Still get that. And so I guess there's like a duality of I feel like I got bits of it, which I'm grateful for, but I think I was still really scarred by not having that in that same depth. And also, being East Asian, media is a bit shit for us.
Oh, it's not great, is it?
No,
you get
it's
a bad
really
rep.
Awful. Yeah, we get bad rep, or we just don't get rep. So I would love to see more East Asian rep, especially rep that isn't fetishizing East Asian women and just degrading East Asian men and mass people. I need the rep.
Yeah, 100%. If there could just be a film where East Asian people are represented just as people, we're not in there because we're Asian, we're not in there to fill a stereotype, that'd be great. I'm so down for that.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be profound.
No.
There we go.
Gosh, it's mad. But again, adoption in the media, that's a whole other... I'd love to talk about that at some point, actually. But that's a whole other episode. We've got a whole series going on here. Oh, gosh. And again, something I'd love to talk about. Do you feel there are many common misconceptions about adoption?
Yeah, so many. Firstly, that we should be grateful. Secondly, that adoption doesn't affect us because it happens before we can remember, and I think that just speaks of society's just like ignorance, or just like not understanding trauma and how the body works and how it holds on to things, and that actually a lot of the time stuff that happens before we can remember is more overwhelming for our nervous system because we're so much younger, and it's harder because then we don't have the memory to think about it with any sort of like rationale. It's just that, like when you were saying, like there's just this like trigger that comes up furious. It's just like body held. um I think that, it's like being saved. I don't really enjoy that narrative belief around adoption anymore. Yeah, I think I think there's a whole white saviorism thing that is coming into play there, where it's like, our lives are better because like we're surrounded by whiteness. But like, are they? Are they really? Like, how do you measure that? How do you know? And there's many more. My brain's struggling to, but yeah, I could probably talk about that for a while. Um, just trying to think of like one last one now.
Don't worry if you can't. I mean, if it pops up, then just let me know.
Yeah.
But no,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I think there are so many. Yeah, so many, and also and just people assuming, there must be something wrong with the child or something wrong with the birth parent. It's like there might not be at all. And yeah, but it is a lot of. I guess the key ones are the ones you
That's a big
brought
one,
up.
actually. Yeah, I think a big one is that birth mothers or birth families, first families, whatever you call them, don't actually want the child. And what we're now learning, especially through the Korean media stuff at the moment, like where they're investigating a lot of adoptions, is that there's been a lot of coercion and a lot of like misguidance that's gone on with first families and first mothers choosing to relinquish their child. And so I think, that one. And also that adoptees just don't have family. Like a lot of adopted people have kin that they could have gone to. And that's not just transracial, that's just any any adoption. A lot of people have kin that's living that they could have stayed with their family in that area. And yeah, for me, that's something that I advocate for these days.
Like family preservation.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and kinship.
And in terms of family sorry, I can't get my words out. Family preservation. I mean, for anyone who's unsure, are you able to give like a brief just overview of what it actually is?
I try basically like keeping families together rather than splitting them up in terms of like taking the child and putting them in another family and giving them a name and identity, and just keeping them within their roots. I guess basically is how I maybe describe it. I don't know the formal definition there, but
no, it's a perfect explanation. And how do you think your adoption experience might have shaped your views on family preservation?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they've shaped it a whole lot. I think that's primarily where I get my beliefs around it from, and just realizing, that coming out of the fog process, realizing how adoption has affected me, and I guess just envisioning a world where adoption isn't the go-to in terms of, if there's a problem. But yeah, I think there's a lot of other systems at play there with capitalism and patriarchy and a whole other podcast of systems. So yeah, it's very complex, and I think there's always nuance in these discussions, whereas like some cases would be different, and some cases, like maybe adoption is like the best option, like the lesser of two evils. So yeah, I always hold on the space for that nuance. But yeah, in general, I'd like to see more of the system like supporting families to stay together, because a lot of the money that goes into adoption could be used to, say, if a family is less affluent, maybe feels like they can't afford to have a child, a lot of the money that goes into the adoption system, which is a lot, could just be used to help families, to support families to live and stay together. Yeah.
And it's so interesting when we talk about adoption, as I actually talked to someone else on another episode that I haven't published yet, but she was saying how often the birth family is kind of almost written out of the story, and it becomes all about the adoptive family and what happens after that and happily ever after, and they found their forever home, which again, in so many cases, I can certainly say I've been so lucky and I have had that very much so. But then the story doesn't end there, and it doesn't, and also hasn't started there. It started way back with the birth family, and they so often, they're these invisible voices or silent voices, and there's not much consideration for them. Whereas, as you said, if the money that's gone towards fund adoption services, etc., which of course are incredibly important, and I would not be here without them, so absolutely not slating them at all, but if also equal consideration is put into family preservation and supporting those families who actually might be able to look after their child, it would, I think it is very important. And where possible, children should be kept with their birth parent, which actually is an opinion that's shared by quite a few adopted parents that I've spoken to as well. And they've said, we think that if our child could have been looked after by their birth mother, absolutely that should have happened.
Yeah, I feel like there's a whole, I don't know if it's a movement, but I feel like so many adopted parents, their views on adoption change post adopting. For instance, I was talking to Beth Siverson, and she's an adoptive mother. She's out in America, I think, and we were talking about psychedelic therapy actually, but she's become like a massive advocate for family preservation and like awareness around the trauma of adoption. As an adoptive parent, she's very much like, don't adopt, don't adopt racially, transnationally. Yeah, so it is an interesting one. I had another point there, but I've forgotten it. So.
That's all right. And kind of just if you could say something to, say, your younger self or a young adoptee listening, what would it be?
A lot. I'd probably need like a good sit down for like hours. But what would I say? I feel I'm so bad at doing this. Like at the end of the podcast, like you have to like have a little snippet, and I'm just like, well,
we can always re-record it another time if you want.
Yeah. No, I think I would say that there's hope for the things that I didn't have hope for. There's possibilities out there, and that it is possible to hold the wounded, traumatized parts of myself that I didn't think would be holdable. I didn't think would be holdable in a whole way that I wouldn't think would be imaginable. And that like it's by like holding those parts and seeing them and really validating them and loving them that they can like grow and heal too.
That's really beautiful, and I'm sure it really is, and I'm sure that's someone listening is gonna relate to that, and it is so important, because I guess when we were growing up, there weren't many people who represented us in the way that we saw ourselves, and just hearing someone kind of validate how you feel, it's such a powerful thing. So thank you for that.
I hope it does resonate. Well, thank you for having me on, and great talking.
No, of course, and thank you so much. Hopefully maybe we can do it again sometime.